Everybody like and subscribe and praise the bell icon. Story number 1.
It was Halloween night, 2019, in a small town outside of Akron, Ohio. The kind of town where people still left their doors unlocked and kids roamed the streets in homemade costumes. But that year, something was off. The air felt heavier, quieter. Even the usual laughter of trick-or-treaters seemed muffled. The story came from a 17-year-old girl named Emily, who was babysitting her neighbor's 2 kids, Max and Lily, while their parents went to a costume party across town. The house sat at the end of a long, tree-lined road. There were no streetlights, just the glow of jack-o'-lanterns flickering on porches. Emily had been babysitting them for years. She wasn't scared easily, but she would later swear that night changed her life. Around 8 p.m., after they finished watching Hocus Pocus, the kids wanted to carve another pumpkin. Emily went to the kitchen to grab a knife, but when she opened the drawer, she froze. Every knife was gone, the entire drawer empty. She assumed the parents had put them away somewhere, but still it made her uneasy. While she was checking the pantry, Lily came running in, crying. "There's someone at the window," she said. Emily followed her to the living room, but when she looked out, there was nothing, just a sea of darkness and their reflection staring back from the glass. She tried to reassure Lily it was probably a trick-or-treater cutting through the yard. But then the motion light outside the window flicked on, and for a split second, Emily saw it, someone standing at the tree line, not wearing a costume, just a tall, motionless figure in dark clothes. The light went off again, plunging the yard into blackness. Emily locked the doors, closed the blinds, and told the kids to go upstairs. She tried calling the parents, but there was no signal. She checked the landline. Dead. That's when she heard it, the sound of leaves crunching outside the kitchen door, slow, deliberate steps circling the house. She turned off all the lights and peeked through the curtain. The pumpkin on the porch was flickering weakly, its candle nearly out. Then she noticed something behind it, a piece of paper propped against the pumpkin. She couldn't make out the words, but she swore she saw her name scrawled in dark ink. Her heart raced. She grabbed the fireplace poker and backed into the hallway, listening. Upstairs, the kids whispered to each other. Then, 3 slow knocks on the front door. Not a random banging, but a rhythm. Knock, knock, knock. Emily whispered, "Who's there?" but no one answered. Another knock, this time harder. She pulled the kids into the downstairs bathroom and locked the door. She dialed 911, but all she heard was static, like someone breathing on the other end. The knocking stopped. For a minute, the only sound was the wind outside. Then came the soft scrape of something metal against the doorknob. Someone was trying to pick the lock. Emily whispered for the kids to be quiet. Suddenly, there was a loud crash from the kitchen. She screamed, clutching the poker. The kids started crying. Then silence. No footsteps, no movement, just the sound of her heartbeat pounding in her ears. After what felt like forever, the sound of sirens grew faint in the distance. Emily didn't move until the flashing red lights filled the window. When the police arrived, the front door was wide open. They searched the house, but no one was there. Every door had been locked from the inside, and when they checked the porch, the note was gone. But the pumpkin had been gutted, its inside smeared across the steps. The police stayed until the parents came home, assuring everyone it was just a Halloween prank. But 2 days later, when Emily went to return a borrowed dish, she saw something that made her stomach turn. There, sitting on the front porch, was a new pumpkin. No candle inside, no carving, just her name etched deep into the flesh. When police tested it, the name wasn't written in ink. It was blood. The case was never solved. Every Halloween since, the family finds a pumpkin outside their door, each one with a new name carved into it. Last year, it wasn't Emily's name anymore. It was Lily's. And this year, the police said another one showed up. No name yet, just a single carved message. Trick or treat.
Everybody like and subscribe and praise the bell icon. Story number 2.
Every small town has that one story that parents whisper about to keep kids home on Halloween night. Ours was about the porch collector. It started as a joke, just another Halloween myth. But in 2017, something happened in Ridgeway, Ohio that made people stop laughing. That year, Halloween fell on a cold, windless Tuesday, the kind of night where the air feels heavier than usual. like the world's holding its breath. Families were out early, and by 8 p.m., most porch lights were already off. But a few teenagers, myself included, decided to keep trick-or-treating, just for fun. We were 17, too old for candy, but we wanted to scare the freshmen who tagged along. We turned down a dead-end street on the edge of town where the houses looked abandoned even in daylight. At the very end stood a single house with its porch light still on, a dim, flickering yellow bulb that buzzed in the silence. The place didn't look decorated, but there was a single carved pumpkin on the steps. The face wasn't goofy or smiling, it was almost human. The carving was too detailed. Cheekbones, eyelids, even wrinkles. It looked like it had been molded from a real face. One of us, Tyler, said we had to knock. "Come on, it's probably just some old guy trying to be creepy." He went first, stepping up onto the porch. We waited on the sidewalk, laughing nervously. But when he knocked, the door slowly creaked open on its own. No one answered. He turned back, smirking, and said, "Guess they're not," before freezing mid-sentence. His flashlight beam landed on something just inside the doorway. There were mannequins, dozens of them, lined up along the hallway, dressed in costumes. Some were wearing masks, others had their faces painted, but their hands were real. Pale, shriveled, human hands. Tyler stumbled back, muttering, "It's fake, it's just fake." But then one of the mannequins' heads turned slightly, like it had been resting until we showed up. I swear I saw its eyes track the flashlight beam. We all bolted. I don't remember running, just the sound of my own heartbeat and the echo of our sneakers slapping the pavement. We didn't stop until we reached the next block. When we looked back, the porch light was still flickering, but now it was brighter. The pumpkin's face had changed. It was smiling. Tyler called the cops that night, half laughing, half panicking. When they arrived, the house was empty. No mannequins, no decorations, no pumpkin, just a cold, bare porch. They said it was abandoned for over 10 years. But Tyler swore he'd seen someone in the doorway watching us leave, a tall figure wearing a mask that looked exactly like the pumpkin face. 2 weeks later, Tyler disappeared. His car was found at the same dead-end street. The driver's side door was open, and on the porch of that same empty house was a new pumpkin, carved perfectly with his face. Now every Halloween, someone new goes missing in Ridgeway, always found near that street. And every year, there's another pumpkin on that porch, carved too perfectly to be made by human hands. People say the porch collector comes out only when your porch light's still on after midnight. He walks the streets, collecting faces to keep his collection alive. That's why in Ridgeway, no one leaves their light on past 11, because if you do, the next pumpkin might look like you.
Everybody like and subscribe and praise the bell icon. Story number 3.
Every Halloween, the small town of Millbury held its Lantern Walk, a night where kids and parents strolled through the old forest trail with carved pumpkins lighting the path. It was supposed to be harmless, a way to celebrate the night without the chaos of parties or pranks. But in 2017, something happened that made the town cancel the event for good. The night started off like every other Halloween. Families gathered at the edge of the woods, kids dressed as vampires and witches, their breath fogging in the chilly October air. Among them was 16-year-old Natalie and her 2 friends, Jason and Emma. They weren't supposed to be there. They were too old for it, but they wanted one last nostalgic walk before heading to a high school party. Halfway down the trail, Natalie noticed something odd. The pumpkins, each carved by local kids earlier that day, looked different. The faces weren't goofy or scary in a fun way anymore. They looked realistic, distorted. Each one had sunken eyes and twisted mouths, carved with an uncomfortable precision, as if someone had studied real human faces in agony. She thought maybe it was just older kids trying to freak people out. But then the air shifted. The woods went silent. Not a cricket, not a rustle of wind. And the lantern flames started flickering in sync, one after another, like something was moving through the line of pumpkins. Jason laughed it off at first, saying it was a breeze. But then Emma froze. She pointed to the next pumpkin in line. "That one's moving." Natalie squinted, and she saw it too. The lid of the pumpkin was trembling. Then, as if something was pushing from inside, it fell to the ground. A hand, a small pale hand slick with something dark, reached out and gripped the dirt. Then another. The pumpkin shattered from the inside as something pulled itself free. A child. He couldn't have been older than 10, but his skin was gray, his eyes glassy. His face was frozen in the same twisted expression as the pumpkin he'd crawled out of. The smell hit them next, rot like spoiled meat in damp earth. Natalie screamed and others on the trail turned. More pumpkins started shaking, cracking. One by one, small figures dragged themselves free, silent but twitching, their movements jerky and unnatural. The parents thought it was a prank until the first one lunged. The chaos that followed was impossible to describe. The lanterns went out almost instantly, plunging everyone into darkness. People were screaming, stumbling over each other, running for the trailhead. Natalie could only hear the wet, shuffling sounds behind her and that awful whispering, like children trying to sing through broken throats. By the time she and her friends made it out of the forest, half the town was in panic. Police arrived within minutes, but the woods were silent again. The trail was empty. No children, no pumpkins, just the faint smell of decay hanging in the air. The investigation found something that never made it into the papers. Deep in the woods, about a mile from the trail, they discovered an old, shallow graveyard, unmarked, long overgrown. Some said it belonged to a children's hospital that burned down in the early 1900s, one that had buried its patients in the forest to avoid scandal. But what unsettled investigators most was that several graves looked freshly disturbed, dirt still damp, as if something had crawled out. Natalie left Millbury 2 months later and never returned. But every Halloween since, she's gotten an envelope in her mailbox. No return address, just a photo inside. Each picture shows a single pumpkin, carved with a face that looks exactly like hers, its eyes gouged out, its mouth twisted in silent terror. And last year she noticed something new. Behind the pumpkin, barely visible in the darkness of the photo, there were 3 figures standing in the background. One looked like a girl her age, one like a boy with a crooked smile, and one small child, gray-skinned, staring straight into the camera.
Everybody like and subscribe and praise the bell icon. Story number 4.
It happened in 2017 in a small town in Ohio that went all out for Halloween. Every house was decorated with lights, animatronics, and fake blood. Kids came from neighboring towns to trick-or-treat there because the whole neighborhood looked like a movie set. But that year, something about Halloween night felt different. A woman named Karen lived on the corner of Maple and 3rd. She loved Halloween, always dressed up, always handed out the best candy. But that year, she told her friends she was thinking about skipping it. She said she'd been hearing strange noises at night, like someone whispering right outside her window. Her friends laughed it off, said she was just getting into the Halloween spirit. So, she set up her decorations anyway. A fog machine, hanging ghosts, orange lights strung across her porch. At around 7 p.m., kids started showing up. Parents stood at the sidewalk while their kids ran up to her door for candy. But one of the parents, a woman named Diane, noticed something odd. Karen wasn't coming to the door. She just sat completely still behind her glass storm door, wearing what looked like a witch costume, her face half in shadow. Diane assumed Karen was trying to be creepy and moved on. But as the night went on, more people noticed. Karen never moved. Her hand stayed frozen midair with a candy bowl on her lap. Some kids even waved in her face, thinking she was one of those realistic decorations. Around 9:30 p.m., when the street started to empty out, a teenage boy named Luke dared his friends to go up to her porch. He wanted to see if she'd finally react. He crept up, laughing, and said, "Trick or treat, Karen." No response. He leaned closer, tapping on the glass. That's when he saw it. Her eyes weren't blinking. They were wide open, glossy, almost dried out. He thought it was a prank until he noticed something dripping from her chin. He ran back to his friends and told them something was wrong. They didn't believe him, but when a police officer drove by doing rounds, Luke flagged him down. The officer went up, shined his flashlight on Karen's face, and immediately called for backup. When they got inside, they found her slumped in the chair, still clutching the candy bowl. She'd been dead for hours. The coroner said she'd been killed sometime that afternoon, before trick-or-treating even started. That's when things got even darker. Her house had no signs of forced entry, but there were muddy footprints leading from the back door to the chair. Small, bare footprints, like a child's. The front door had been locked from the inside. Security cameras from a neighbor's house caught something the police wouldn't release publicly at first, but details leaked later. Around 5 p.m., before any kids had come, a small figure could be seen walking up her driveway. It looked like a child in a mask, maybe 4 feet tall, carrying a pumpkin-shaped bucket. Karen opened the door, leaned down, and said something. The kid didn't move. Then, without warning, the figure lunged forward. The rest of the footage was too dark, too grainy to make out, but about 5 minutes later, the door closed. The police never found the mask, the bucket, or any trace of that child. But every year after that, people on Maple and 3rd say they've seen a small figure walking the same route. No one's ever close enough to see its face, but they say it stops at Karen's old house, stares at the porch for a few seconds, then disappears into the fog. Last year, a new family moved into that house. They didn't know the story. They put out a bowl of candy and a fog machine for Halloween. When they checked their doorbell camera the next morning, they saw something that made them move out a week later. At exactly 8:46 p.m., a small child in a cracked pale mask stood motionless on their porch for 9 minutes straight. When the fog cleared for just a second, you could see what it was holding in its little hand. A piece of paper that said, in shaky red letters, "Trick or treat, Karen."
Everybody like and subscribe and praise the bell icon. Story number 5.
Every year, the small town of Ridgemont held a Halloween block party that everyone looked forward to. It was supposed to be fun. Costumes, candy, and haunted houses scattered through the neighborhood. But the Halloween of 2013 was different. People still talk about it, though no one likes to say too much out loud. That year, a new family moved into the corner house on Brookline Avenue. They were quiet, never came to community events, and the curtains were always drawn. A week before Halloween, a flyer appeared taped to every door in the neighborhood. It was from that same family. "Come visit our haunted house," it said. "Real scares. One night only." At first, people were thrilled. Finally, someone doing something new. The flyer even promised free candy and a $500 prize for whoever made it through the whole experience without leaving early. The address was the old Brookline house, number 47. On Halloween night, a long line formed outside. The air smelled like smoke and wet leaves, and the lights inside the house flickered dim red through the windows. The front yard was decorated with what looked like life-size mannequins dressed as corpses, all hanging from the tree branches. Everyone assumed they were fake. The first group went in around 8 p.m. They were 4 teenagers from the local high school, 2 girls and 2 guys. The family at the door didn't say a word, just pointed toward the dark hallway and smiled. One of the teens, Nate, posted a Snapchat right before walking in. "This place is insane. Wish us luck." That was the last post from his account. About 10 minutes later, the line outside started getting restless. Nobody from the first group had come back out. People laughed it off at first, assuming they were taking their time. But then 20 minutes passed, then 30. When the next group went in, a dad and his 2 daughters, they never came back either. The laughter died. Someone finally tried to open the door, but it was locked. The windows were pitch black, curtains pulled tight. One of the neighbors called the police. When officers arrived, they found the door slightly ajar. No one was inside the living room, just a trail of wet footprints leading down the hall. The air was thick with the smell of bleach and something metallic, blood, though they didn't realize it at first. The deeper they went, the stranger it got. Every room was filled with mannequins arranged in disturbing positions. One was nailed to the wall. Another was sitting in a chair with its head tilted back and mouth wide open. But when the police got closer, they noticed the mannequins weren't plastic. The skin was too real, the texture too soft. They found the first group in the basement. All 4 of them were hung from hooks in the ceiling, just like the decorations outside. Their eyes were missing. The dad and 2 girls were found in the kitchen, seated around a table set for dinner. Their bodies were positioned perfectly still, as if waiting for someone to start eating. Their mouths were stitched closed. But the most disturbing part was that there was no sign of the family who lived there. The furniture upstairs was gone. Every drawer, every closet, empty. Like they had vanished the moment people started going inside. The only thing left behind was a VHS tape on the counter, labeled The Show. When investigators played it, it showed grainy footage of the people entering the house that night, each one smiling, laughing, and then slowly realizing something was wrong. The camera followed them, even in complete darkness. The tape ended with a voice whispering, "Thanks for coming. We'll see you next Halloween." No one lives on Brookline Avenue anymore. The house was torn down the following spring, but neighbors still say that on Halloween night, a faint red glow appears where it used to stand. And if you walk by around midnight, you might hear faint knocking coming from under the dirt, like someone is still trying to get out. Every Halloween, flyers still appear taped to doors in nearby towns. Same handwriting, same promise, real scares, one night only. And no one ever admits to putting them there.
Everybody like and subscribe and praise the bell icon. Story number 6.
It happened in 2016 in a small Pennsylvania town that was known for its extravagant Halloween traditions. Every year, people would turn their front yards into horror movie sets, fake graves, motion sensors, screams in the night. But that year, something was different. Something was off. The town's biggest attraction was the Hollow Trail, a mile-long path through the woods where volunteers dressed as monsters and scared visitors. It was all in good fun, until that year when one of the actors never came back out. Her name was Stephanie. She was 19, a college freshman home for the weekend. Her role was simple. She hid in the trees near the midpoint of the trail, waiting for groups to pass, then jumped out in a bloody prom dress with a fake knife. She had done it 2 years in a row. But around 10:45 that night, the manager noticed she hadn't radioed back in. They assumed she left early or went home with friends. The next morning, when she didn't answer her phone, her parents called the police. At first, everyone thought she'd run off. Halloween night meant parties, drinking, chaos. But when police searched the trail, they found her costume, torn. The fake blood mixed with something darker, sticky and real. Her phone was found under a pile of leaves a few yards away. The last video recorded on it was only 11 seconds long. It started with her laughing, whispering, "Okay, last group of the night." Then she froze. You could hear leaves crunching behind her, slow, deliberate. She turned the camera toward the noise, and for half a second, something stepped into view. It wasn't a person, at least not anymore. The figure was wearing what looked like a scarecrow mask, stitched burlap, hollow eyes, but its movements were jerky, unnatural. Stephanie whispered, "Who's there?" and the video cut out. Forensics couldn't identify the figure, and the footage never showed a face. No one claimed to see or hear anything that night. But one of the other volunteers, a guy who had worked near her section, told police he remembered something strange. Around 10:30, he saw what he thought was another actor walking the trail, dragging a shovel. The man never spoke, never joined the rest of the group, and wasn't on the staff list. The search went on for weeks. Then in mid-November, hunters found a half-buried mannequin deep in the woods. Only it wasn't a mannequin. It was Stephanie. Her body had been posed sitting upright, arms at her sides, her head tilted slightly, mouth sewn shut. Her skin was pale, her eyes replaced with small black buttons. The worst part, her body had been stuffed with straw. Police closed the Hollow Trail for good after that. The case was ruled undetermined. The scarecrow mask was never found. Every Halloween since, people claim to see someone walking that same stretch of woods at night, a tall figure in a dirty burlap mask, dragging a shovel, humming softly. One hiker, years later, posted a photo online taken on Halloween night. In the background, just barely visible among the trees, was that same shape. Behind it, if you zoomed in, you could see something else, a pale face with buttons for eyes, watching from the darkness. No one walks the Hollow Trail anymore. But if you stand near the entrance on Halloween night and listen carefully, you can still hear the faint sound of straw brushing against the leaves, and a whisper in the wind that sounds like a girl laughing right before she screams.
Everybody like and subscribe and praise the bell icon. Story number 7.
Every town has that one Halloween story people whisper about, but never truly believe until it happens again. Ours was about a man named Victor Hale. He was the kind of guy who took Halloween too seriously. Every year, he'd turn his home into a full-blown haunted house, realistic enough to make kids cry and adults uneasy. But what made Victor different was his obsession with making things authentic. People said he worked at the local funeral home and would sometimes bring back old props, things that weren't really props. There were rumors he used real embalming tools, real blood, maybe even worse. The police checked once after someone complained, but they found nothing. Victor was clever that way. On Halloween night, 2011, something happened that still makes my town lock their doors early every October 31st. That year, Victor went all out. His haunted house was called the Body Farm. You had to sign a waiver before entering. The line stretched down the block. I was 17, and my friends dared me to go inside. I wish I hadn't. The moment we stepped in, the smell hit first. It wasn't the usual latex and fog machine stench. It was sweet and metallic, something that clung to the back of your throat. Victor greeted us at the door, wearing an apron spattered with something that looked far too real. His grin was wide, eyes bloodshot. He whispered, "Welcome to my masterpiece." The first few rooms looked like any haunted house, mannequins, strobe lights, fake corpses. But the deeper we went, the more unsettling it got. The bodies on the tables didn't look fake. Their skin had pores, bruises, hair. One had a tattoo I recognized. It was of a cartoon ghost, something my friend Eric had on his arm. I told myself it was just a trick, but then I saw his shoes, the same old Converse with the ripped lace. My stomach dropped. Eric had gone missing the week before. His parents were still searching. Victor appeared again, as if reading my thoughts. "You like realism?" he whispered. His voice trembled with excitement. "I find people don't respect horror anymore. They need to feel it." My friend Tara started crying. We turned to run back, but the hallway had changed. The walls weren't plywood anymore. They were slick, wet. Something dripped down from above. We kept moving until we found a door with a flickering exit sign. It led into what looked like a cold storage room. Inside were metal tables, all lined up. Bodies, real ones, lay covered in thin plastic. I recognized some faces, people from town who disappeared over the past few years. Their eyes were open, mouths frozen in silent screams. There was a camera mounted on the wall, blinking red. Victor stepped in behind us, holding a bone saw. "Don't worry," he said, smiling through cracked lips. "You'll be part of the exhibit too." We bolted. I don't even remember how we got out. I just remember the screams, the pounding footsteps, and the stench that followed me home. We called the police that night, but when they arrived, the house was gone. I don't mean it was empty. It was literally gone. Just a patch of dirt and ash. They said there must have been a gas explosion. But there was no crater, no debris, no proof. They didn't find Victor's body either. Over the years, on Halloween night, people still report seeing lights flicker in that empty lot. Some even say they hear Victor's voice from the darkness, whispering, "Step right in, experience true horror." Last year, a group of teens tried to film a TikTok there at midnight. The camera went live for exactly 2 minutes before it cut out. The only thing visible before the feed ended was a figure in a blood-stained apron stepping into frame, smiling wide. They were never found. And this year, there's a new flyer taped to a telephone pole downtown, advertising a haunted house called the Body Farm. Same name, same logo. The address listed isn't Victor's old property. It's my house.